there's a way, where there's a whip. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Lashes says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. 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 Left, right, left, right, left. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Left, right. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's sword. Left, right, left, right. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lashes says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way.
Alright, coming in, that's classic animated Lord of the Rings there. You gotta give you a little bit. Now, I'll grant you, it's not what we look at as orcs of today, but and you gotta love the song, right? You know, I'm just saying. Then is the land of the Gorgoroth. This in Middle Earth is Mordor, or the core central Mordor. And this here is Gorgoroth, the Middle Earth campaign book based on J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings for MERP by Iron Crown Enterprises. And this is much more than just a mere adventure module. It's not and or a source book, so it's a combination thereof, but the idea being numerous settings and adventures that your characters can pursue in the core of Mordor itself at key times in the history. There are some things in here that are repeated from other books, and I won't go over those. I will point them out, though. We all know the visuals of the tortured land and the smoke and the Mount Doom in the distance and the flame and the harsh heat or dry air, the lack of flora and fauna, and the lack of potable water. You take all that into granted until your character's in a situation where they have to worry about how are they going to replenish their water flasks and find food and things like this, and considering everything in Mordor is either out to kill you, eat you, or poison you, you have to take that into account, or you don't. In the typical converting stats, bonuses and things for adapting it for your various preferred level or combat system. Then we got our introduction. It says, east of the Ependal, or the Fence of Shadow, the south of the Mountains of Ash, lies the dark plain of Gorgoroth, the heart of the evil throughout the Second and Third Ages. This volcanic plain is home to the Lord of the Rings, and its very name is dreaded by the free peoples of Endor. Smoldering in the center of Gorgoroth looms the great mountain Orodruin, or Mount Doom in the languages of men. Within its fires at the cracks of Doom, Sauron created the one true ring. A highway flanked by smoking chasms links the Dark Lord's forging chambers to the grim fortress city of Barad-dûr and the throne of the Lidless Eye. The Dark Land, while terrible and spectacular, is once again filling with evil as the power of Gondor wanes and the watch on Mordor fails. It offers more than just a challenge to those who wish to venture forth and explore the unknown land. And it says, the Black Land, Mordor is a grim realm. Black ash, fires of Mount Doom, and the reek of brimstone are a constant reminder of the diseased nature of the region. The overpowering presence of Sauron and his minions enhance the desolation, which we talk about desolation, but it is not empty desolation. It is I'm leery of using the term thriving, but it is definitely populated. Various levels depending on the time of and power of Sauron. So we got the Tale of Years, First Age, Second Age, Third Age. Land itself talks about the mountains of Mordor, the mountains of Shadow, the Morgai Ridge, the Thorn of Shadows, Mountains of Ash, the Yepel Darth, the Ongrath, or the Gap and Nern, add to the Ashen Mountains, and the Mountains of Slow Death. It's one thing, as you are, if you're familiar with anything Lord of the Rings, and Mordor specifically, it is a fenced land. It has a series of mountains that surround it on three sides, and then it's further divided within by some shorter mountain chains or ridges and various distinct geography. Then you have sections that are east of Mordor proper that are also under the sway of the minions of the Dark Lord, specifically Nirn, which at the time, I imagine that Iron Crown had intended eventually would expand and include areas like that in their own modules and or source books, and because of not closing their doors at some point, that just didn't happen. Which is, I'm not familiar with Lord of the Rings Online or the middle, some of the later games, so I can't say 100% what's been expanded upon since MERP. So I can only go by what I have. The Gap and Nern, the Uden Vale, the Plateau of Gorgoroth, Mount Doom itself, etc., etc. The grip of Sauron. This strip of land lies between the mountains ranges and the devastation of Mount Doom. When viewed on a map, the area forms the shape of a hand tightening its hold on an imprisoned realm. The grip of Sauron acts as a zone where exit from the plateau is watched. It is also an area which the forces of darkness are mustered for war. Geologically, the land is similar to that of the Perth Ullman, especially the Gorth, these names, to the south, yet it contains much less plant and animal life than its counterpart, with the added bonus of fell beasts hunting for their prey. The mightiest fortress of Mordor occupy the mountains edging the grip. And there's a artist's rendition of the Great Road to Mount Doom, the climate, roads, and supply. See, this is when we talk about desolation and not really being desolated. The roads in Mordor, especially near Bradir, are heavily traveled. Construction from smooth basalt and mortar. Major routes are 35 feet wide, run on causeways 5 to 10 feet above the surface of the land. Along the edge of most, water cisterns are sparsely placed to facilitate the movement of troops. The cisterns tap cool water from a very deep water table, and they are inevitably possess the strong taste and smell of sulfur, as well as having an oily feel. The roads in northern Gorgoroth are all in excellent repair, remained so during the long period of Sauron's absence in the Third Age. South of Baradur, the highways run flush with the ground and are not as finely crafted. Unlike the northern terrain, the southern landscape permits off-road travel off-road. Several tracks worn by the passage of feet and hooves across the lands of Gorgoroth. Most are nothing more than small trails. Patrols on the roads are infrequent, but caravans are constantly traverse the highways, and the fearsome predators of the plateau keep vigilance over an ever malicious eye, especially the fell beasts of the mountains. Damage to the roads due to convulsions of the earth and drifts of volcanic ash are quickly repaired by the ever-present labor force of the Dark Lord, and Sauron's Road, or the finest highway in Mordor. The ecology, the flora that does exist, everything's nasty. It's all meant to make you sick or despair. Muck with you, eat you. Herbs and poisons, lots of poisons. Fauna, flying creatures, black swans, cliff buzzards, echo hawks, bats, insects, ants, hornets, locusts, morgy flies, scorpions, spiders, reptiles and amphibians, carnivores, other animals, monsters, ash drakes, cave worms, fell beasts, giant spiders, trolls, undead, lots of undead. See, people and culture, the orcs. Due to the severe environment of Gorgoroth, the Mordians live predominantly in Nirn, with a scattering of herdsmen in the plains immediately to the east of the Blackland and a few nomadic tribes just south of the Ash Mountains. The only race truly indigenous to the barren plateau are the orcs, mountain warrens, supplemented by Sauron's fortifications in the Second Age, have housed their kind in Gorgoroth since Morgoth's first tampering created orcs from the elvish race. Yet men, elves, dwarves, trolls have entered the volcanic plain to clash in mighty wars fought within the mountain walls, and Sauron's armies, both Mannish and Orcish, occupy the citadels and barracks within Gorgoroth. It says, the orcs break down from the Silmarillion, the the parents of Urkai, the general drill, personality, lifestyle, religion, social structure, warcraft. Then we got the men of Mordor. Due to Gorgoroth's inhospitable environment, men ensure the plateau itself for shelter of the fortresses surrounding it. These bastions house the bulk of Sauron's Mordorian armies. The warriors come from many different places and people. Indigenous Mordorians include the forces such as the Nurnings, the Nurgs, the Nerthithium, and individuals of mixed blood. However, many more mercenaries come from lands surrounding Mordor, make its war host a melting pot. Few possess a pure racial heritage. Haradrim and Brags comprise the largest groups, but many other tribes have substantial representation. The approximate composition, trolls. Although trolls are true monsters bred by Morgoth, some Treg possess mannish qualities to such a degree to appear considerably more civilized than orcs. William Tom and Bert Huggins from The Hobbit, for example. Yet the variation between individuals is large, and many a troll is little more than a crazed, mindless beast intent only on killing. Troll personalities are equally varied, but all are simple in the true sense of the word and carnivorous to the extreme. Though trolls are exceedingly greedy, the actual possession means nothing and are not important unless missed. I said the subspecies to which the trolls belong determines his personality. Crave trolls are by far the most beast-like and berserk, while stone trolls are less violent, though they are no less dangerous. 8 to 14 feet in height, trolls possess a strength of 5 men. Their immense weight, between 580 and 3,100 pounds, combined with a crude assortment of weapons, make them one of the most feared races in Endor. Females are thought to be rare, though determined the sex of a troll is unknown and dangerous art. Trolls mate for life, until a mate is misplaced, with families dwelling together and breaking up in groups only among the stone variety. Cave trolls breeding is brief, rare, and violent, possessing no remnant of social institutions. In general, trolls appear as large, deformed humanoids, etc., etc. Half trolls. It says here, the improvement of the original Morgothic troll was engineered by Sauron during his final rise of power, intended to be ultimate warriors. The Olghai may well deserve that appellation. They know no fear, thirst for both blood and victory, and many operate normally in full sunlight. The breeding process invoked by Sauron involved considerable magical meddling combined with carefully selected mating. The large sorcerous influence of their creation enables them to ignore the stun and bleeding effects from non-enchanted weapons. Much more intelligent than their lesser brethren, Olghai serve as trusted lieutenants, the Dark Lord, and adept warlords in their own right, etc., etc. Then we got half trolls. Even more repugnant process than those that give rise to the Olghai have led to the creation of the Petrog. Using the finest females examples of Olghai, Sauron bred them with some of the strongest, most brutal of the Varag warriors. The resulting blast first average about 7 foot tall, jet black skin, red forked tongues, and glowing demonic eyes. Other races in Mordor, dwarves, said Baver's people, the first dwarves to leave their homelands surrounding the Chambers of Waking, traveled south and built the holes in the Yellow Mountains. Not all who set out on the journey arrived at its finish. Since Fad and Stone Toe and his followers settled in the southern foothills of the fence of the Green Slopes, or Epithconlith, which would later be named the Erd Angerth. The splinter group prospered, but their final fate was unhappy. Sauron took the lands that they dwelled in for his own. In the Second Age, most of Stone Toe's descendants met death, while those that survived were beguiled by Enauter, the Lord of Gifts, and swore fealty to him. When fair seeming may have proved to be foul, Fedon's line held their misguided allegiance. So we have a minor tribe of dwarves who have sworn allegiance to the Dark Lord. And then we have elves. And yes, even elves can succumb to the Lords of Darkness and the power that he possesses or presents. Despite advantages of immortality, fairness of form, and wisdom granted by the Valor, not even the firstborn escaped the temptations of the Dark Lord. Although Celebrimbor was deceived by the Evil One's worst, there were many of the Quindi who embraced the ways of Sauron. The most significant aspect of the seduction of Eldar is that none of the Dark Lord's victims were warriors. Rather, they joined Sauron in search of increased knowledge and mastery in the realms of of essence, or i.e. magic. Sauron considers the garnering of his elvish servants to be one of his greatest victories over the free people. His corrupted servants are drawn from all the Quindi save for the Vanyar, the majority descended from Avar tribes in eastern and southern Endor. However, the most powerful of Sauron's elvish servants are Noldor, Orcinda, and Origin. Then we got politics, the hierarchy, Sauron being at the top, the Lords of Mordor, worshippers of evil, masters of black art, commanders of the host, politics of war, the Orc tribes, and there's a lot of them. Orcish confederations, Mordorian strategy and tactics, so the war hosts, the hosts of Gorgoroth, the host of Nirn. Unlike the hosts of Gorgoroth, the numbers of men the hosts of Nirn far exceed those of orcs, since Nirn's environment is more conducive to human lifestyle. Representatives from many of Endor's eastern and southern peoples comprise the battle force. One division of managed troops came from the elite Echaril's host, one of the Nazgul army of the Southern Dragon. The bulk of the host's orcish forces derived from the blah 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 First of Mordor's confederations. Smaller host of Gorgoroth, the host of Nirn is intended as a support and defense force, numbers about 50,000 men, 25,000 orcs, 350 trolls. It says here, in the last days of the War of the Ring, the host of Nirn moved into Gorgoroth and into Udin to support the weakened host of Gorgoroth that was defeated outside of Minas Tirith and retreated. Mondorian strategies and tactics, battlefield unit organization for units, various commanders, peoples of note, Sauron, and you can find information on Sauron in several ice supplements. This goes into quite detailed history, so they do in others. The same with the Nine Nazgul. They're already touched on in numerous other installments. And these go. Some of these might vary just a hair to allow for their influence or their what they do in Mordor or have done, and where they're positioned when not at war or not being pushed around by the Dark Lord to do what do his bidding. We have quite a bit. Then we got the Mouth of Sauron, otherwise the Lords of Mordor. Gothmog, this very nasty half-troll that they've called Gothmog in honor of the original Bolrog. Here we have Selhadring. The Chilling Silver was born in Gondlan. In the later years, the first stage, his father was a Noldor, one of the master smiths of the city. So here is one of these corrupted elvish lords that serves Sauron for his own interests. Seldring, the Algolian. This is the head, the Bolvog. He's the head high priest for Sauron's twisted religion. The Ungolian is the second most powerful of Sauron's mortal servants. Pledged his loyalty to the Dark Lord in the second age of his cousin Archelac. Later accepted one of the rings of power, lost his personal desires under dominating the will of his master. Ungolian was wiser. Though his loyalty belonged to Necromancer, his soul remained his own, i.e. he didn't accept a ring and become a wraith. Born in the second age of Nirma of the line of Elder Hayden Edain, it's through vile sorcery has continued to extend his life, I guess. Commanders of the host, various tough big bads that you could potentially throw at your characters. This feller here is a pretty nasty one. The Gahur, though not a Confederation leader, Garthur is a werewolf, a demon descended from the line of Lesser may have seduced the early Elder days. He can assume both the shape of a man and a large wolf at will. His body perished to fall of Bedir at the end of the second age, but in third age, 1100, he returned to Endor and rebuilt his power base, etc. Right? Yeah. So we have Gollum. Then we got Mount Doom itself, Mountain of Leaping Flame, geological cutaway of the Crack of Doom, layouts of Mount Doom, the Crack of Doom, and the Sermith Nar, an area that was constructed by Sauron to the specifics in order for him to cast the One Ring, and a few other things that he may do there. but generally speaking, it's his own personal private domain and foraging area. Mouth of the demon, throat of the demon. Chamber behind the hidden door of the crack of doom inspires supreme dread in the orcish minions who carved its stone. The scene appears exactly as a great bullrog were extending its forked tongue across the deep and forbidding pit. A dull red glow emanates from below, while the halls and the high ceiling of the room are lit by fires enshrouded by the head of the demon. Due to a powerful illusion, the head not only appears aflame, but alive as well. Anyone crossing a bridge fails a resistance roll versus a 60th level attack will believe the illusion. The victim will feel a great tongue as we're trying to pitch them into the chasm. He must make a very hard moving maneuver to successfully remain on the bridge each round or tumble into the fiery depths. The fall is over 200 feet, but the waiting magma should make calculation of fall damage unnecessary. The illusion also causes victims to believe they should succeed in crossing the bullrog would devour them. So it really makes it they want to turn around and run away and try not to fall. And various other interesting things. Level 2, Mount Doom. Mount Doom's level 3. The Stone of Sorrow. The Stone of Sorrow was erected at the fall of Sauron in the Second Age, 3441. Elrod, Círdan, and Isildur agreed to build a monument dedicated to Gil-galad and Elendil, as well as all those who died in the War of the Last Alliance. The monolith was placed at the very spot where Sauron slew the two High Kings, and it was himself overthrown by heroic Isildur. Located on the eastern slopes of Mount Doom, about 1,500 feet below Sauron's road, the Stone of Sorrow is a smooth, white, three-sided marble obelisk standing 7 feet tall. On each side is dedication to those who fought in the Battle of Dagorlad. Stone has been blessed, so no evil creature can touch it without suffering intense pain. All those aligned with Sauron are born of darkness. Trolls, arcs take a 3-sided E electrical and 3 C hit crits for everyone there in contact with the stone. The monument's rock is enchanted, rendering it unbreakable by almost any force. Even the eruptions of Mount Doom seem to be unable to dislodge it, standing as a beacon of hope in the impenetrable darkness of Mordor. Sauron himself cannot approach the Stone of Sorrow without feeling unbearable pain and anguish, more as a result of remembering his own defeat than because of the stone's power. Just one of them little things that we're never sure of, always not aware of. It'd be what you call beta canon stuff that was added by the writers, the designers, you know, to give more flair and more depth to the region and the area. And we got the Sirak Angan standing between the crater Udin, the plateau, and Gorgoroth. Sirak Angan is built to fulfill a role very similar to that of the Morannon Gates. Under the Gondorian supervision, the rampart was designed and constructed following the victory over Sauron at the end of the Second Age. The Isenmouth would prevent any evil creature slipping through the unguarded pass into Udin from the passing into Mordor from this choke point, well over 1,000 years. Can you imagine being a Gondorian soldier or noble officer, whatever, being stationed in Mordor at these very foreboding, these very desolate looking, depressing fortifications to keep bad guys and evil creatures and other things from returning to a natural evil den of depravity? I mean, it'd have to take its toll on a person. It'd have to wear you down over time. And then what would you do? You know, how do you deal with coping with that sort of environment for long periods of time? It's not a total wonder. Even had Gondor's power not started to wane, I think eventually they would have been less and less inclined to keep garrisons here for any length of time anyway. Nature of the Iron Jaws, the layout. So basically it's a different version of the Black Gates in a different section of Gorgoroth, serving a quite similar role. And then later becomes an internal fortification of the Dark Lord and his minions. Terminos, or the High Black Fort, two of the highest points of the Kurgan are in towers of the Isenmouth, possessing commanding view of the surrounding, just like the towers of the Teeth in the Morannon. Bear with Tower of Shadow, originally designed as a Gondorian architect to house a garrison that would monitor the Gap in Nirn and the ruins of Orodruin. The plans were reviewed and then improved and then forgotten and then eventually partially built by a crazy nobleman from Gondor and then finished by minions of Sauron. So this is how we end up with this one, guarding another section, another pass into Mordor itself from the east. An overview of the tower, layout, storage tanks, the Great Stair, foundation. There's a big water trap design here. Storage tanks right there. Outer wall, inner courtyard, in depth and detail, of course. Managed keep. The tower. Now, one of those things that you don't consider, or maybe, you know, I don't know, not everybody considers, and we think about what is it that creates a civilization. And in some aspects, all these fortifications and orcish cavern systems and stuff constitute defenses more than anything else. But it makes perfectly good sense that there would be certain larger, I don't want to call them cosmopolitan areas, but towns, even cities, and that's what this one here is. This is probably the largest city, if you will, in Mordor itself. Esgorth is the center of power in Gorgoroth during Sauron's secret return. The city continued to fulfill this role even after Minas Ithil was taken in Third Age 2002. As the headquarters for one of Mordor's factions, it witnessed many meetings between the Nazgul and the Lords of the Realm. This central location, Agent Nirn, Gorgoroth, and adjacent Agorth slave mines made it one of the most strategic spots in the Black Land. The City of Death is aptly named, for no other place, not even Minas Morgul, possesses the deadly ambiance of Astagirth. The corpses of hundreds of victims form the hellish mines of Argoth, transported daily to the Valley of Death. Unless consumed by the orcs, they are incinerated among huge smoking pyres, etc., etc. That's another thing, right? Not that you really care, you give a whole lot of credence to this sort of thought process or something. But when you look at, when I look at stuff like Mordor and Sauron's forces and the vast armies that he's able to procure and the huge hordes of orcs that multiply and man all the defenses in the surrounding mountains and within, and allow the Dark Lord to press his claims on Middle Earth, certain logistics have to be met. Orcs don't eat stone. They don't drink dust. They're not undead. They don't, even undead need some kind of substance to, for the most part, to draw upon. So we're not even talking his, the Sauron's managed contingents and living contingents, or non-orcish. So the orcs, there's a scene where in Lord of the Rings where the Pippin and Merry are captured by orcs from Saruman, and the fast march back to Isengard. There's this scene where there's 3 days of stinking maggoty bread. We've had 3 days of nothing but maggoty bread, and we get some fresh meat, and we get some fresh meat. Just his leg. He don't eat his leg. We're going to eat his leg, right? No. We got fresh meats back on the menu, boys. Right? So, we established that orcs will eat anything. They'll eat things that a billy goat would gag on, including each other in the pinch, right? Probably much more common than not. So, I imagine that when orcs die, that just provides for a food resource. And if things get really tight, the weakest become dinner. It's all part of the way the orcish mindset works. But we also know that they do eat bread, they do eat grains, they probably eat some crude vegetables and things like this. Anything that's edible and they can shove in their mouth, they're going to do it. It still means they need to have this material brought up and processed. You got to have access to it. When you look at the great citadels of like Carn Dum, for example, or Gundabad, these are mountain fortresses with hundreds of thousands of orcs, and in the layouts you find places like fungus caverns and underground lakes, and for the majority of the food sources, it's going to come from forage, because orcs don't farm. and they don't handle slave labor well. They don't have, without certain kinds of controls, they're not going to have massive farms run by slaves. We know from the books and from some of the letters from Tolkien that there were vast human-run farms in Nirn, which is the adjacent area to the east of Mordor proper, and these were huge for the most part, huge slave plantations, and ran by people capable of making sure that the farming gets done. And then from those stockpiles that shipped back into Mordor to help support both his managed contingents and the orcs and goblins and trolls and what have you. But you have to, you don't have to, right? But I look at things like that and think just how vast and intricate this operation was. And it's the same like the Witch King's kingdom of Angmar. Angmar was a desolate, very desolate, cold, foreboding location, but different from Mordor, but similar, not conducive to agriculture or vast ranching or herding opportunities. So a lot of the material resources, the food supplies, all had to be trucked in via caravan through the Misty Mountains and or captured and foraged, what have you. Get something, food for thought. So why we say that, or why I bring up, hang on, think for a second. Your player characters are out doing their business and they're traveling from here to there, and whether you embrace random encounters or not, or you create your own, or you do a mixture of both. Why was there a group of orcs or goblins, out in the sticks? They were raiding something or they were foraging for stuff. They're just as inclined to go hunt down bear and deer and anything else they can get their hands on and collect them up and haul them back to the tribe in order to help eat and feed each other. Just food for thought. I'm going to take a moment and take a pause here. If you give me a second. Alright there, sorry about the slight pause there. Yeah, there's like three or four of them in there. I didn't, it doesn't fit right. I tried. So she's back out there somewhere. Yeah, she's probably out there laying in the kitchen. Frankie, our rescue cat, shelter cat. My wife has nice nicknames for everything. Anyway, the postman came and we had to check a few things. Sorry about the switch over. So Oscar sent Osgurth. Center of power of Gorgoroth during Sauron's secret return, blah blah. Intense competition, taking of Minas North City does remain one of the most important sites of Mordor due to strategic location. After the departure of Culmo and Defil through the Nazgul, Lord Tonvarkar, the near Herod, ruled the Osgurth until the fall of Sauron. Two orcish leaders, one from each of the Confederation, concentrated near the city, grudgingly served Lord Rakith while more willingly displaying their authority over the orcish populations or of mixed orcish portions of the mixed population, etc., etc. It says, during the years of War of the Ring, additional influxes of men and orcs increased the population to well over 50,000 individuals. Think of that for a nice big city in Mordor. History of the City of Death. Overview. The Elmod Girth cradling the evil city. The floor of Elmod Girth moves outward on the gap of Nirn, and a narrow trough of jagged rock. Raised roads enter the vale from the north and south, hugging the canyon walls. And then we have a layout of the town, the city walls, the sewers, the orc caverns snaking the mountains nearby. Snaking through the mountains like cancer growths, the two goblin colonies of Astagirth are each home to some 800 Yerk. They are composed of two separate tribes. The Urgina and the Deprahai exist in a natural orcish state of mutual hatred. They resent the existence of a walled city within their veil, but the continued presence of powerful rulers of the city ensure the orcish cooperation. Tribal chieftains enforcing the Nazgul's orders among their subjects. Anybody that messes up are disciplined by using the catapults from the city. That's one way of keeping people in check. Fire! Original caverns are a network of ancient lava tubes. The Tulakaskus, I can't even begin to pronounce that one. The Urkguna named their holds. So we got two different goblin cities under or attached to the main city. The surrounding areas, the old caverns, the troll population. Nice big skull-shaped gatehouse. I guess a key fortress for the city. The Minas Tirith of the Tower of Black Ash was built in the Second Age. The beacon tower, fortified outpost, remains significant as the only hold of the Dark Lord that never succumbed to the might of the Last Alliance. The status was more easily attained than it might be suspected, since Minas Tirith rests in one of the most inaccessible spots in Endor, northern edge of the Gorgoroth. The army of Last Alliance regard the castle as abandoned or of too little importance to destroy, that like played a role in return of the Dark Lords of the Third Age from its ramparts. Sauron maintains control of the isolated orc tribes dwelling in the southern flanks of the Erdluthi. This is blah blah blah. So we have yet another tower. Other sites of note: the mines of Orodruin, home to a large percentage of Mordor's orcish population that were tunnels between the Erd-Angarth. They're said to be larger than any dwarf dwelling or orc hold. However, much of the Argoth is unknown, and only selected points along the length of the mountains are well mapped. Tower ranges connect together by a series of cracks, caverns, and latitudes which follow the major fault lines between the plateau and Nuren. Utilizing these natural features as an underground avenue, tailing the mines completely is all but impossible. However, some of the major sites are described below. Travel through the tunnels is hazardous, and a table generated random passages supplied in section 23.0 somewhere later in the book. Between the mines are subject to Sauron's will, and the inhabitants follow the directives under strict compulsion. Local leaders, most of whom are orcish descent, transmit the Dark Lord's orders. The Darl Lords. During the formation of the Confederation, many of the tribal chieftains were replaced by minions handpicked by Gurthog. During the War of the Ring, their mines provided an industrial base for the Dark Lord's war efforts, supplying both manpower and materials to the awesome host of Mordor. During the sheer size of the mines, rare groups of renegade orcs and men, i.e. escaped slaves, lead independent lives, struggling to survive in this lightless hell. Most have never seen the light of day. Isolated underground towns, forging caverns, dungeons riddle the rocks, housing and incarcerated untold thousands. All the races of Middle-earth are represented in the slave population of the mines. The actual numbers continually vary due to cruelty, disease, injury, displacement, or neglect. Really? All races of Middle-earth. Makes me wonder if that means there's an int down there somewhere, right? Trade among the inhabitants is strictly barter, with the exception of being Stypian tribute to the Dark Lord. Such ties are paid in raw materials, weapons, or tools, although fraud is not uncommon, but punishable by exceptionally painful and public death. In addition to movement of goods, grisly collections of undernourished and maimed coursers are transported south of the city of Oscris for disposal. The procedure is not strictly necessary, but has become a ritual among the inhabitants. The dead who are not removed either left to rot or fed to the slaves. The Vadokbergzag, measured as the crow flies, or the Death's Dark Way, stretches approximately 250 miles but the winding passage is over 400 miles long when traversed curve by curve, never narrows to less than 40 feet or drops below 15 feet in height. Wooden beams, metal pillars, natural formations shore up any weak spots in the ceiling. Strong stone bridges span the deep chasms and ravenous fire pits which interrupt its passage. Maintenance is continuous and carried out faithfully by the area's inhabitants. Luminous fungi, sporadic lanterns, and fire pits provide illumination. The route's floor is scoured by two sets of ruts formed by never-ending trains of wagons and carts. Worn troughs function as rails, and so deep that a considerable effort is needed to remove a cart from the track, unless the area is one of the usual unloading sites. Patrols are frequent, with special detachments based at Osgoroth traveling the length of the passage every month. And then we got Zohokor, possibly the single largest operation in Gorgoroth. The Zohokor, or mines of iron, are responsible for nearly half, or 45%, of the total refining of ores. Elaborate forging chambers located in the upper reaches, continuously producing weapons, armor, siege equipment for Sauron's hosts. The Snaga-Ong labor with a little reward under the close scrutiny security of the Goth's Garag. The output of the area is closely monitored by commanders at Torchlight, since it is a vital link to the industrial chain of Mordor. The Zaberhaten, home to the blah 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 descent below, holds this, or the descent below is a substantial refining operation, though not nearly as extensive as the Zohokor. Majority of the slaves at work here at the arid angle are brought to the entrances of these caves from the Nirn and are then distributed throughout the mines. Constantly, the population of the descent is fairly high, although only half are actually orcs. Several tunnels lead to the surface and maintain beacons among the mortar of Nirn. The hull's name derives from these vertical configurations, since it extends from the spires of the mountains down into blackness of the underdeeps. Afar Atut, originally one of the smaller settlements, a number of other midtown, dwarf dwelling, lower mines, an orc encampment. Encampments and beacons. Beacons, the encampments, Gorgoroth at other times before the fall of Nurmur. So it says, Mordor grew strong long before Sauron was recognized as the threat to Endor once again. Unless the pirate characters themselves are orcs or in the service of Sauron, adventuring on the plateau of Gorgoroth in this era adds a new meaning to the word dangerous. Mount Doom was active. Barad-dûr, the original tower, stands as a grim monolith overlooking the land. She dwells within her lair, and Askr is a collection of infested caves. The nation of Gondor has not even an idea yet, and Sauron is beginning his rise to power. After the fall of Nurmur, the siege of Barad-dûr, or the first one. Third Age, Gondorian occupation. Return of Evil, War of the Ring. Fourth Age. Then we have suggested adventures, which we're not going to go through. I don't really think there's any value. I mean, there's value in it, but no real. Well, maybe there is. Maybe we should go through some of Orcs the Leading Mystery that Barad-dûr. Ties of Terror, the Initiation, Expedition of Mount Doom, Northern Erdithy, Surrounding Presence, Part 3, The Terrain, the Ash Mountains, okay. The Northern Erdithy, the Gondor is a widespread realm, the surrounding presence, some dozen miles, Carog. The terrain, the Ash Mountains, influence of Mordor, plants and animal foothills, the Darunin, the plains. Tarthark, the enormous grassy plain north of the Ash Mountains, is dominated by shallow hills, short grasses. The climate is mild, though the weather is fickle due to the absence of natural barriers against prevailing westerly winds. Thunderstorms, hail, and tornadoes can strike with a little warning. That's that area north of the Mordor. This would be Orodruin, that's the Sea of Run further north. Some of the influences and important persons: Evelor the Governor, Scoundrels of Barlithun, Morglad, the Death at a Manor, Murder, and more NPCs. Vidus the Shaman, Tyson, the Shaman's Cottage, the Task. Rewards, encounters, murder of a merchant, just a bunch of different possible adventures and stuff that you can conduct using this campaign book, as it's called. And then we get into creating a merc orc character. So part 4, campaign age, creating a merc orc character. So here's the material and stats and things you would if you were going to create an orc player character. Quirks and traits. There's a nice little set of... You're a good liar. You're a vermin eater. You have a favorite word. You're a glutton. You're a vocal thinker, i.e. you think out loud. You're bossy. You're a knuckle cracker, constantly cracking knuckles and other joints loudly. You're a jerk. You got a runny nose, ever-present sniffles. Stupid questions. You ask the most inane and annoying questions of everyone and anyone. You gonna eat that? Was this edible? Hey Fred, your ear fell off. You gonna eat that? Languages of Gorgoroth. Common languages, Gorgoroth. Uskurth encounter table. Master NPC table. Oh yeah, lots of nice stuff here. Right? There you go. Gorgoroth. For 1,000 years, the men of the West stood guard of the Black Land, and ever vigilant to prevent the return of Sauron's might. The great plague has broken that watch, and the evil stirs in the east of the mountains of shadow. Torchlight glares from the arrow slits of once abandoned citadels, as smoke unfurls from Orodruin's lone, quiet summit. And so do the flying gnats in my house. Let's see. Smoke unfurls from Orodruin's lone, quiet summit. Foul beasts move by night through the cracks in the broken surface of Gorgoroth's volcanic plain. There you have it. Gorgoroth, the campaign for Middle-earth.